Hello guys and welcome back to Telex Academy. My name is Faisal and I'll be continuing our Three.js journey. So in the last video we actually look into the basics of Three.js, whereby we talk about scenes, camera, render. We also look into how to create a geometric material. So today we'll be looking into light and shadow. Let's jump into it. Firstly, let's talk about lightning. We said Three.js actually provides several types of light to illuminate your scene. The most commonly used lights are ambient lights, point lights, direction lights, and spotlights. This ambient light, it actually provides a soft light that affects all objects equally, while point light emits light in all directions from a single point, and the direction light is like sunlight shining from a specific direction, whereas the spotlight now actually creates a cone of light. So basically we're saying for Three.js now, the most commonly one we have what ambient light, direction light, point light, and what spotlight. So I'll walk you through on how to add lights to your scene and working with shadow to actually what enhance realism. So let's begin. So let's begin. Now the first thing for us to do, come back into our webpack config file, then make a change here. Now the entry point now, since I want to create a new JavaScript file, I want to call it main.js. So I change it here, right? So coming back to my src now, I create a new file and call it what? Main.js, right? So the very first thing for us to do now is to actually import our Three.js. So we say import, we did it in the last video, said import all as what? Three from Three, right? So the next thing to do now is what? To set up our scene, our camera, and then what? Our radar. So we'll say const what? Const scene is equal to new three dot scene, right? The three dot scene, then we have this. Now I say const camera is equal to new three dot perspective camera, then we give the values we actually want. Now the next thing for us to do now is to create what? Our renderer. So say const renderer is equal to new three dot what? Web geo render, right? So now let's move on. So now the next thing for us to do now is say render dot size dot set size to the what? The window dot inner width and to the window dot what? Inner height. Now all this has been explained in the last video. So we said document dot body dot append child render dot what? The DOM element. That's what we do for what? For setting up our scene, camera, and what? Renderer. So let me make a comment set up for scene, camera, and render. So the next thing for us to do now is to actually what? Add lights. Now remember, we have different types of light. So the first light we'll be looking into now is what? Is the ambient light. So I could say const what? Const ambient, right, is equal to what? Now I could say new three dot ambient light, right? Then I give the value. So I could say a default value of 0 times 0x 0x f f f f f f. So then 0.5. Now what I'm actually doing here now, I'm actually creating a soft white light. So let me make a comment. Create a soft white light, right? So now after this, now the next step for me to do now is to what? Is to add the scene. Abi? Now say scene dot what? Add ambient light. Now after this, the next thing for me to do now is what? To create what? The point light, right? So I'm saying this const point light is equal to 3 dot point light. Then I'm using not this value, sorry. I'll be using this now. So I'm saying 0x, then I'm saying f, then I'm saying 0, 0, 0, 0, then 100 here. So yeah, I'm actually what? Creating what? A point light. Now after creating a point light, the next thing for me to do now is to what? Is to position the light point light. So I say point light, then position set as what? Just not giving value. So let's say 10, 10, then another 10, depending on how you want it. Now after this, now the next thing for us to do is what? Add this point light as a what? To the scene. So we say scene dot what? Dot add, right? Add what? Point light. Exactly. So we have this running. Now the next thing for us to do now is to what? Is to create a directional light. So I could say this. Let's say const directional light, right? Then I say new 3 dot directional light, right? Then I say I give the value I want for it. So I want to create a green light. So basically I'll say 0 x 0 0 f 0 0 1. Now so the next thing I do now, I say directional light dot position, right? And I set the position to what I want. So I say let's say this one I put as -5, then 0. Now the next thing is to what? Add it to the scene. So scene dot what? Add directional light. Now the next thing for us to do now is to what? To create the spotlight. So I say const spotlight, right, is equal to new 3 dot spotlight, right? New 3 dot spotlight. Then I have this 0x 0 0 0 0 ff, then 1. This one I'm actually putting is just for the intensity of the light. So here I'm trying to create a blue light. Now depending on the kind of color you want, you can actually add anything. So I say spotlight dot position, then dot set as what? And I give the value I want. So I will say 0 0 10 and 0, right? So at this point now, the next thing for me to do now, I have to place the spotlight in a certain angle. So I say spotlight, also spotlight dot angle, right? Dot angle is equal to mat dot pi over 4. Now I add the scene now. So I'm saying scene dot add of what? Spotlight. Exactly this way. Now the next thing for me to do now, I need to create a ground plane. Now let's say create a ground plane. Now let's see. So the first thing I do now, I say const plane geometry remember you can use any name for your variable, but I'm just trying to make it something that based on what you're currently doing. That's why I'm just doing this. Now I'm saying new 3 dot plane geometry, right? Then I'm saying 100 and what 100, right? So the next thing I do is const plane material is equal to what? Sorry, it shouldn't be doing. Const plane material now is equal to new 3 dot what? Shadow material, right? Then I give the values. Now I'm saying I want the opacity to be of 0.5, right? So we have this running. Now the next thing for me to do now is what? Const ground is equal to new 3 dot mesh, right? Or what? Plane geometry, comma plane material. So we have that way. Now the next thing to do now is to what? To create a rotation. So I'll say ground dot rotation, then I say mass dot pi over what? Or over 2. Now the next thing is to receive the shadow. I want you to receive the shadow. So I say ground dot what? Receive shadow dot what? X, right? Is equal to, sorry, receive shadow is equal to true, this way. So after this, now the next thing for me to do now is to what? Add the scene. So I say scene dot what? Add what? Add ground. Now after this, the very next thing for us to look into is the create a cube. So now say create a cube, right? So the first thing that happens is what? I say const what? Let's say cube geometry. Okay. Now new 3 dot box geometry. Then inside I give a value. I give values of 1, 1, and 1. Sorry. So I say this const cube material is equal to, sorry, const cube material is equal to new 3 dot mesh what? Mesh standard material. Then I give the value of what I want. So I say I want the color as let's say 0x ff 0 0 0 0. Okay. Now the next thing for me to do now, I say const cube is equal to new 3 dot mesh, then I say cube geometry and what? Cube material. Now the next thing I say is this. I say cube dot what? Dot cast shadow equal to what? True. I want the cube to cast shadow. Now the next thing for me to do now is to what? Add a scene. So I say scene dot add of what? Of cube. Now after this, The next thing for me to now do is to actually position my camera very well. So I say this sorry. So I say this, I say camera. Let me make a comment first. Position the camera. Okay. So I could say camera dot position dot z equal to what? 5. Now the next thing to do now is to enable shadow mapping. Okay, let's see this. So the next thing for us to do now is to enable shadow. So say enable shadow mapping. So I'll say renderer dot shadow map dot what enable equals what? True. So now the next thing for me is to what? Animate the loop. Animate loop. Now I could say function animate, then I'll say request animation frame and the likes. So the next thing I do is what? Activate that function all the time. Now let's run. Now before we run it now, remember this our webpack config file. You can go back to it. Now I want us to come to this package.json and see something. Yeah, I want you to add these stats and you say webpack serve mode as well development. Then I want you to also add this build. Now since we created a new file, we need to do a new bundle, a new compilation. So just say to run that, just say npm build. It actually runs a new compilation for you, a new bundle for you. Like it updates the bundle.js file for you. Now coming back to our HTML, now you can see I'm still just using what? My body.js. Now let's run. Now to actually run it now, you say what? npm what? Start according to what you saw here in the package.json file. So I will say npm of what? Start. Okay, so it's letting us know that it's running on what? Localhost of 9000 according to what we said. Now let's open on our browser. So we have this. So the next thing we move on to is textures and materials in Three.js. Three.js actually provides various materials such as mesh basic material, mesh Lambert material, and mesh Fung material. Then each material has its own properties and determine how it interacts with light. So let's jump into it. Now, for us to keep everything safe, let's say we're creating a new one and we call it texture.js. So let's come back here, change our entry points to what? Texture.js. So I'm back here. Now remember the very first thing that happens here also is the same thing. We need to create what? Our we need to set up our scene, our camera, and then what? Our renderer. So the first line we say import what? All as tree from what? From tree, right? So the next thing we do now, set up our scene, camera, and renderer. So I say const scene is equal to what? New scene const camera is equal to new tree dot perspective camera. Then I give my value, so I say 75 window dot inner width, then slash window dot inner height. Exactly. So I say then comma then 0.11000. So we have that. Now the next thing for us to do now is to create what? Our renderer. So we say const renderer equal to what? New 3 dot what? Web gl what? Render. Now I say renderer dot set size and rest. So we say document dot append the body. Now, so the first thing we want to do here now is to what? Add our ambient light. So I say add ambient light. So I say const ambient light equal to what? There ff. Let me use a different intensity, okay, to create a soft light. Now after this, now I say scene dot add what? Ambient light. Now the next thing for me to do now is to create a cube geometry. So I say const cube geometry, then I say is equal to new 3 dot box geometry, right? So after this, now I create different materials. Now I say this const basic material right is equal to new 3 dot mesh basic material, then I give the color I want, so saying color, then value 0xff0000. Okay, so after this I say const what? Const lambda material, right, equal to what? New 3 dot mesh lambert material, then I add this. So I say this now, color of 0x00ff00. Now I have this also. Now the next thing I say is the what? Is the Fong material. So I say const Fong material, then I give the color of my choice also. Then I can say this to this. I can say comma. I say, so I'll say shiners. Then I give a value of, let's say 100. Okay, so let's see. Okay, made a mistake here. This should be inside these brackets. Now so after this, now the next thing we say is to create and add what? Our cubes. So create and add cubes, right? So we say const what? Basic cube is equal to what? New 3 dot mesh cube geometry, then what? Basic material. Then I could say const lambert cube is equal to new, right? New 3 dot mesh of what? Dot mesh, then I say cube geometry comma lambert material, this way. So when I'll say the last one, the Fong cube, and I say new 3 dot mesh cube geometry, then what? The Fong material. So after this, now the next thing for me to do is this, to create what, the position. So I say lam vet cube dot position, right, dot x is equal to 2. Then I say the func cube position is equal to what, -2. Now I'm having this here, so I'll say scene dot add of what, busy cube, scene dot add of what, Lambert's cube. Then we also have what, scene dot add of what, for the func cube. Now the next thing for us to do now is actually what, load this texture and apply it to the cube. So I could say const what, const texture loader, let's call it that, equal to new texture loader right. Then I have it this way. So I say this now, const texture equal to what, texture loader dot what, load, right. Now so const, so we say const texture, right, equal to texture loader. Now dot load, what do I want it to load? I want it to load an image for me. So I'm saying brick, I have this picture here, brick brick dot png, yeah. So I close, right. Now the next thing for me to do now is to say const texture material equal to what, new mesh basic material, right. But then I say mesh standard, sorry, this shouldn't be doing this for me. So I say new 3 dot what, mesh standard material. Then I have this, so I say map, then texture, right, this way. Now the next thing I do now, I say const what, textured cube, Abby. Okay, let's just say this, let's use textured material, textured cube. Now it's actually equal to what, new 3 dot mesh, right. Then I say cube geometry, comma, then I say textured material, right, this way. So now after this, the next thing for me to say now, I say is what, textured cube dot position, then I said dot y equal to minus what, 1 on the y axis. So now I'm saying add the scene now. So I say scene dot add, right, of what, textured cube, this way. So the next thing after that is to actually what, create, to position our camera. So say camera dot position, right, then dot z equals what, 5, right. So the next thing for me to do after this now is to what, animate my loop, right. So now I could say function what, function animate, right, this way. Now I'm saying this, request animation what, frame of what, animate. Then I say this, basic cube, right, dot rotation dot x equal to 0.01, right, sorry, yeah, I made a mistake, 0.01. So here I'm saying basic cube dot rotation dot y, right, equal to 0.01, right? Sorry. Now I'm saying the Lambert cube on the x should also be the same. Then the Lambert cube dot rotation on the y should also be the same. Now after this I said the phone cube dot what rotation also should also be what the same, so dot y, then I say plus equal to, sorry, meant to x first, plus equal to the same value. So I have phone cube here also of y as the same thing. So we have the textured cube rotation, and we have the textured cube rotation also for the y, so axis dot y, then it's equal to what, plus equal to 0.01 also. So after this, the next thing I need to do is what, call out that my animate function, animate. So let's run this and see how it goes. So the first thing that happens is this, sorry, now let's open our terminal again. So the first thing we need to make it bundle, so say npm what build, sorry, npm run build. So it has basically compiled everything together for me. Okay, so let's run. So to run it now, we'll say npm of what, start. So let's run this. So open our browser. So on our browser we are having this, right? So we're having our cubes in different textures and colors. Thank you.